Hello and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Cryptonomy Talks. As you all know, at Cryptonomy Talks, we introduce you to some of the who's who of the cryptonomy world, the real movers and shakers who make a difference and who have ability to shape the way in which cryptonomy is going to shape our future. On that note, we have Patrick South here today. He's a VP sales for one of the pioneering companies in the world of cryptonomy called TRM Labs. They are the people who hold the value of trust and compliance in the world of cryptonomy. So, on that note, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's start with Patrick. Something about yourself. Tell us, how did you come to cryptonomy world?
The crypto economy was something that I intersected with several years ago. I was working for a consulting firm at the time, and I fell down the proverbial crypto rabbit hole. It's all I wanted to spend my time doing, nights and weekends. And so I went to our CTO at the time and asked for some budget and stood up a practice around it. I ran that for about 3 years when I realized that one of the greatest headwinds in the space were regulatory issues. And so I went and worked for a nonprofit that focused on promoting sound policy as it relates to digital assets. Did that for 2 years with regulators across the globe. And along the way, came across this small startup called TRM Labs. At the time, we were 12 people and became completely enamored with the business and the vision of the founders. And that was a year ago. Today, we are 95 people across 14 countries working on a mission to build a safer financial system for billions of folks.
Awesome. So tell us a bit more about TRM Labs. What does TRM Lab actually do? What kind of service you provide and to who?
We are a blockchain intelligence company. So we work with crypto businesses, with financial institutions, and with public sector agencies. And within that, we are effectively enabling AML compliance or helping to enable AML compliance. And so what we do is we run nodes across 26 different layer one blockchains, things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and others. And we then enrich that data set with threat intelligence. And that's a fancy way of saying that we take a alphanumeric crypto wallet address and we link it to a real world entity. And so we have a proprietary database that says, hey, this subset of wallet addresses is associated with ransomware, and this subset of data is associated with these exchanges, and this subset is associated with sanctioned activity. And now our clients that use the type of products that we create are able to use that data set to perform AML compliance. Beyond that, we have a set of APIs that people are able to call and return risk data. And then we have a forensics tool that enables people to trace the flow of funds from source or destination of funds from one wallet address to a set of others.
Perfect. So do you also do something like a transaction monitoring?
We sure do. So we enable a transaction monitoring product, and that's one of the API products that I was referencing. Our crypto exchange clients, as well as our financial institutions, leverage that. There's a couple different ways in which they use it. Some are more post-trade, which is reactive of saying, hey, we want to send a transaction hash across and generate a risk score. We also have a wallet screening product, which is proactive. And so we have a variety of clients that will use that to proactively screen a wallet address before they engage with it. This is commonly used for withdrawals, but what we're seeing more and more usage of is this in the DeFi landscape, which is how can we pre-screen liquidity pools prior to us engaging with them.
Awesome. So what are the emerging risk typologies that are coming up in the crypto world, different from the traditional world?
Yeah, we see a lot of traditional typologies, so things like layering and other sorts of techniques. But we're seeing these done in new and novel ways in the crypto landscape. And so there's three key typologies that we're seeing emerge today. The first one is cross-chain analytics. And so we saw this I'll kind of refer to the Bitfinex hack that took place that has gained a lot of public notoriety as of late. And the first piece here is they very intentionally were moving funds between different layer one blockchains. So moving funds from Bitcoin to Ethereum, for instance, to obfuscate the flow of funds. The intent here is people believe that if you're moving funds from one chain to another, it's difficult to trace that. Well, cross-chain analytics is something that we have a deep focus on, and that's one of the typologies that we're seeing. The second typology is around something that we call nested services, which in the traditional landscape we know very well in terms of what that looks like. In the crypto landscape, what we see is people establish what we call parasite VASPs, virtual asset service providers. These parasite VASPs are instances where Patrick goes and creates an account at Exchange A. Exchange A does KYC on Patrick, and oftentimes I'll use fake credentials to set that up. I then go and stand up a front end website called patricksexchange.com. And what I'm enabling is a money laundering as a services business in which Jessica can come to patricksexchange.com. She can swap Ethereum for Bitcoin for no KYC. And I'm just going to use my deposit address at Exchange A to enable that swap. That's something where, again, we have a dedicated focus around identifying these nested services so our clients can have an understanding of, one, where they have embedded nested services in their infrastructure, and regulators can have an increased focus on this. We saw this with SUEX, for example, and we're also seeing activity around this in the Bitfinex case. The third and final typology is around something that we consider to be programmatic money laundering. And so in the crypto landscape, anyone can generate 1,000 new wallet addresses with the click of a button. And again, to reference the Bitfinex hack, we saw instances there where computer-based algorithms were used, or programmatic money laundering was occurring to enable these type of trades. And so we see very sophisticated actors leveraging this. And what we're looking at are the new age typologies that emerge from that. So aside from it being programmatic money laundering, how can we make assumptions to say, hey, regardless of having attribution or knowing what address and entity, what entity and address is associated with, how can we say that funds started in location A, they then went to a bunch of intermediary addresses and then consolidated to a set of common destinations? It's a pattern of dispersion followed by consolidation, and we should be identifying that.
Awesome. And what kind of solutions you provide to standard financial institutions today who want to take an exposure to the crypto world?
Yeah, there's been an influx over the past 12 months, frankly, in terms of interest in financial institutions getting exposure to the space. We've really moved away from this, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are bad, to, hey, these can be revenue enablers. And so for us, we really see a three-phased approach for financial institutions. Phase number one is we just want to get off of zero and start driving revenue. And the way to do that is by providing banking services to cryptocurrency businesses. So we want to effectively enable on-ramp. And the way to do that is by leveraging a product like TRM Labs' Know Your VASP capability, in which they can simply type in the name of a VASP and perform diligence on that entity. So they're looking at off-chain data, like where they're licensed and jurisdiction, what their KYC controls look like, what beneficial ownership structures are, and they juxtapose that with on-chain data, meaning based on historical transaction monitoring, what sort of activity is that VASP engaged in? Do they have exposure to ransomware? Do they have a significant exposure to terrorist financing or sanctions activity? And now banks can make real-time determinations on the type of businesses that they want to provide on-ramp services to. Once they move off of that, the next phase is typically they want to engage in on-chain economic activity. And what this looks like traditionally is enabling sub-custody. So they go to market, they find a sub-custodian, and the very next step is they want an AML compliance tool to help enable that journey. And we're typically there to help to do that. And so they're going to use our API products to your earlier point, perform transaction monitoring and wallet screening on a proactive solution. The final frontier is we're going to start to see banks release stablecoins and other DeFi products. And in that setting, they're going to want to have real-time analytics on the type of products that they're putting in the marketplace. And we want to be able to provide the blockchain intelligence to support that.
Patrick, you mentioned stablecoin, right? And there has been a huge debate lately as to how stable are the stable coins.
Yeah.
How do you guys see it? Because it now, right now, seems that anyone can come up with a stable coin.
Yep.
So how do you see the stability of the stable coin itself?
Yeah, great question. So we are not necessarily a player in the market to make a determination on just how stable a stablecoin is. I think from our perspective, what we're seeing is there's a variety of mechanisms that are being used to enable this. And so we see fiat-backed stablecoin that are one-to-one backed with cash deposits, for instance. We see others that are more algorithmic and frankly quite fascinating to look at how those are being launched and released. All in all, where we see the greatest adoption today are in things that are cash-backed stablecoins in terms of usage in the marketplace. I firmly believe that, and this is based off of others' thinking, there's a phenomenal resource called Fighting to be Stable. It's a Medium post by someone at Dragonfly Capital, and they theorize that the transition that we'll see in the stablecoin market is from an unregulated stablecoin era to a regulated stablecoin era that we're in today. And the final frontier will likely be a censorship-resistant stablecoin era, in which we'll see something that's more algorithmic in nature.
So then, Patrick, one more question on that. And given your background, right, what is the resistance that we see across governments towards accepting crypto economy wholeheartedly. At the same time, resistance to regulate crypto economy, either through the current regulatory framework or coming up with something new. Why it has taken so long? It seems that people are accepting cryptonomy in the general market, both retail and institutional clients, qualified and to some degree even unqualified clients,
Correct.
seem to be attracted towards it and seeing some value. However, we don't see the same on the regulatory side, or probably the speed of adaptability and acceptance is considerably different. And why would that be?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we have an hour for the show here. This is such a big question, and frankly, it depends on what side of the market you're looking at it from. But to try to encapsulate a response, I'd say that what we've seen to date is a global regulatory patchwork of frameworks that exist and how we're approaching regulating cryptocurrency. Uh, to date, there are a lot of frameworks that exist, especially in the United States, in which regulators are saying, hey, there are existing, the SEC in particular, saying that there are existing frameworks in which digital assets fall into. The rules are known and you need to play by them. And I think that in some instances they are correct. In people who are building novel products on top of blockchain-based technology, just think that they're new and different, and therefore there's a different regulatory regime that's required. And frankly, it's not completely true. But there are unique areas in which regulators like the SEC or other entities may consider releasing additional guidance on how players in the market can operate. And I think where we're going to start to see some real nuance come into play is in the DeFi setting. And so there's a big bifurcation that's occurring today between permissionless DeFi and permissioned DeFi, and how institutions can get comfortable engaging with it. And I think that's an area where financial institutions in particular are looking for greater clarity on, hey, how can we, in a compliant way, engage with DeFi? And that's occurring not only in the US, but in the Cayman Islands, within Jersey. If I'm a large hedge fund that's operating in multiple different jurisdictions, it's important for me to engage in a compliant manner across the different areas in which I'm operating. And so we're going to start to see that those type of regulatory frameworks come into place. And where we're sitting today, here in Dubai, it's particularly exhilarating to be able to see the type of advanced thinking that's going into releasing frameworks for institutions engaging with DeFi in a compliant way.
Absolutely. Some geographies are doing significant more work than the other, and Dubai has taken significant steps in embracing crypto economy and even coming up with a virtual asset regulatory authority, hopefully soon. But that is something honestly believe would probably define how the regulator should work, and at least it will be one step forward for rest of the world to see how it can be done. One more question for you, Patrick. What are your views on NFT? Because that's the new thing coming up, and the compliance associated with it, risk associated with it, and then adding complexity to NFT is the metaverse itself,
Yes.
right? And most people believe that there is one metaverse. The reality is there are at least 200 in making with various organizations. So we are already in a multi metaverse situation, if not more. So, how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, there's a good chance the simulation we're already operating in is a metaverse in and of itself. So there's something.
That sounds like Matrix to me,
Yeah, yeah.
whether you took a red pill or a blue pill.
I'm still trying to figure that out. I think I took an orange one. So in the NFT space, this is obviously something that has gained a lot of traction over the last 12 months. I think one of the most fascinating things here is traditional firms that wouldn't have been considered, fintech or financial intermediaries are now entering the space. And so you can look at e-commerce, or you can look at traditional household brand names. So well-known apparel companies and other entities that are beginning to launch NFTs. All of a sudden, there's an element of tokenization that's taking place, and they are starting to become financial intermediaries themselves. And so the landscape of folks that are serving as a financial intermediary are going to continue to grow. And that's a trend that we think is quite fascinating. As folks engage with NFTs, whether through a marketplace or in peer-to-peer transactions, we think it's important for those financial intermediaries to have the technology to understand who they are servicing. So if you are a well-known brand that's minting NFTs, you'll probably want to know, based on the smart contract, what type of entities are transacting with you. Excuse me. And that's a very clear way for them to have an understanding of what their user base looks like. And you want to do that from one, a compliance standpoint, to have an understanding of what that client base looks like. But two, it's from a business development standpoint. Isn't it important for you to know what type of demographics you're servicing and who is consuming, or the type of entities that are consuming your NFTs?
Awesome. Patrick, thank you for being with us today. It was super insightful. Any last few words you would like to tell our audience before we say goodbye? Any message that you have, either for the policymakers or for the entrepreneurs, that you would like to say?
For the entrepreneurs out there, I just encourage you to keep building. It's tremendously fascinating to watch the amount of innovation that's occurring within the landscape, and we're hopeful that folks are doing it in a way that continues to engender trust and safety. And to the extent that anyone wants to have a conversation around that, TRM Labs would certainly welcome it.
Awesome. As I have said many times before, love it or hate it, crypto economy is here to stay. And it's in our best interest to know more about it and learn about it. And thankfully, we have people like TRM Labs and Patrick who are going to make sure that we remain safe in the crypto economy world that we know little about today. But with that, thank you. Thank you for watching this episode.